Alrighty, folks. My first video was what's going wrong at Ferrari, so I thought let's take a look at Lamborghini. I'm sick as a dog right now, so if my voice sounds like that, I apologize. So, basically, when the Revuelto came out, I thought, okay, it's not my favorite, it's not the worst, but there is like no hype for it. And I got the numbers to back it up too, but let's first take a look at the designs themselves, right? So, for me, the absolutely most beautiful Lambo to date is probably the Aventador SV, probably in red, though I take it as a spider. But in any case, this to me is peak Lambo, right? It's so sick. Now, the Revuelto is not a bad-looking car by any means, but, I mean, it's not my favorite, especially the zigzag design in here. I much prefer just a simpler version of it. But it's not a bad design by any means. Like I said, I like the sort of bubble roof it's called, I suppose, though here's not really a bubble. I don't like the massive like gap here. The side sill is way too big. Like this was already kind of big. This is way too big. The lights, not my favorite, but by any means not the worst. Especially this little kink here in the hood. I think it looks sick. Also, it has these little things that come up in the bumper. Same with the Huracan. The Performante, which we'll look at in a second. But why is there no hype for this car? And here are the numbers to back this up. So the Revuelto is in red, the Aventador is in blue. And just look at the absolute hype for the Aventador when it came out. And of course, it slowly declines. But then you have the Revuelto, who's just come out. It had like a bit of a peak, and it's already down. Now, this might as well go up. I mean, this might just be this. But just look at the absolute state of the graph. Like, it's a massive difference. And you're not going to tell me that in 2011, 2012, the internet was like more used to Google cars or whatever. Like, I think this is pretty accurate. And so it's not only just me. There is like no hype for the Revuelto. So I found this on one of the forums, and he basically agreed. I'm quite surprised by the relative lack of posts on the Revuelto. And he said, I can't help feeling that these hypercars have evolved past being relevant anymore. But I disagree with that, because if you then link up the Ferrari SF90 versus the Revuelto post, you see, or graphs rather, you see that they're actually going up about at the same rate. And to me, the SF90 is probably the closest thing to the Revuelto that you can mirror it against, I suppose. So, then brings us to the Temerario, which is, of course, the Huracan replacement. And here you can see, again, these little, things that come up in the bumper, just straight from the Performante, which is my favorite version of the Huracan. But basically, the Temerario is like the perfect mix of a Huracan and a Gallardo. This side door rather, and this air gap or whatever, it just comes straight as an evolved version of the Gallardo, and this is of course the Superleggera. So this little opening here it's a bit more within the sloping roof. Here it comes up a bit, reminds me of that. I mean, I think the Temerario also looks fine. Now, I'm not a fan of whatever this is. Let's call it a hexagon. I'm not a fan of that at all. And also the lights, they don't excite me at all. Like these pointy lights, I think, look way more aggressive. Not a fan. Though they also kept the hood design where the sort of hexagon shape also comes in, which I personally like. And again, the double bubble roof, as it's called, though again, not really here bubbles. They've also taken that from the same as the Revuelto, which was not here on the Huracan. And of course, keep in mind, these are the upgraded version of the standard one. But I think they look very similar to this, right? So let's take a look at those numbers, shall we? Similar story. When the Huracan came out, boom, right away. In red, we have the Temerario when it came out, and now it's dropping. Now, point of note is that the Temerario is not going to be delivered before 2025. So we're on the brink of that. I'm not sure if it's going to be Q1, Q2, whatever. So this graph will probably go up, but I'm seeing a similar story with the Temerario as with the Revuelto. Like the hype is just not there for these cars, whereas Lamborghini has been absolutely cooking it for the past 10 years. A bit more on the design. Let's take a look at the rear then. I got some more graphs coming up, by the way. But let's take a look at the rear then. So, the rear of the Revuelto, to me, is an absolute nightmare. I hate this thing. I hate the exhaust with the hexagon. Like, this spoiler looks terrible. Like, I can't believe this is actually a working spoiler that does well. I'm not by no means an engineer or a designer or, but this looks absolutely terrible. I absolutely hate it. If you compare it to my baby, the SV, look how sick this thing still looks after all these years. I mean, when the sort of splitter and bumper just go up to create the spoiler, dude, oh my God, it's so good. It looks so good. Now, similar story with the Huracan and the Temerario. Personally, I actually like the rear of the Temerario way better than the rear of the Revuelto. But again, the exhausts, terrible. I hate it. Similar story when Ferrari started doing this, absolutely hate it. I mean, the lights are fine. The fact that you can see the tires like that, very exposed, I think that looks pretty cool. It's going to be a nightmare to drive behind as you get a lot of, stones and other kind of stuff thrown at you. But, I mean, this looks great, though it's no match for the Huracan. The rear lights of the Huracan and the Aventador at that, I mean, it's just no beating it. It's fun to see that the rear, braking light, originally from F1 probably, has also made its way to the Temerario. I think that looks great. So let's take a look then at the sales numbers. And there we can see that the Revuelto is actually doing pretty well. Like in the first, it's not even a full year, and they're already up to the Aventador numbers. So sales-wise, it's doing great, no complaints. The Huracan obviously does great still. We have to see when the Temerario comes out. I mean, I'm guessing it's going to be a similar story. But the absolute king of this graph is the Lamborghini Urus, which, if you count those up, equate to more than half of the sales of Lamborghini. And they absolutely cooked with the Urus design and with the car itself. Everybody is shitting on SUVs by performance manufacturers. And I just did a video on McLaren where I'm guessing they're going to come out with an SUV as well in the coming 2-3 years. But Lamborghini is the absolute king of the performance SUVs. They absolutely cooked with this one. Every athlete, every, rock star, pop star, rapper, whatever, they are all ordering and driving the Urus. It's the king of the road, next to probably the G-Class, or I don't know, a Cullinan or whatever. But this Urus is the absolute king. And then if you look at Lamborghini Urus here is in blue, and the Purosangue by Ferrari is in red, you see the complete opposite. That's what I mean. I mean, the Purosangue is, it's fine, but compared to the Urus, I'm totally seeing why the hype is over here, design-wise alone, right? Price-wise, I think this is also significantly cheaper than the Purosangue, though I could be wrong on that. So, let me know. What do you think? Is there any hype for the Revuelto, or is the Aventador just going to be peak Lambo until we see the next design of the flagship coming out in, likely again 10 years or so? I personally still believe the Aventador will keep the crown and the Revuelto will not come close to it. But we'll see what you think down in the comments below. All right? Thank you, and let me know.